talking about a potential strike in what sounds like to me a pretty clear message that, at least far as she's concerned, now that the players have gotten a little tasty taste of revenue sharing money, which we found out in the last week they got themselves a bonus.
That right there is the sound of a union starting to crack. Kelsey Plum, first vice president of the WNBA Players Association, just delivered what might be the clearest signal yet that the strike threat is collapsing. And notice what she emphasized. A strike would be the worst thing for both sides. Not just bad, the worst thing. That's not the language of someone preparing for battle. That's the language of someone looking for an exit. So what changed? Because just 6 weeks ago, in mid-December, these same players voted near unanimously to authorize a strike. Now suddenly we're hearing about players changing their minds, tense meetings, and a first vice president who sounds more interested in playing basketball than walking picket lines.
Was a tense meeting between the players last week as we're trying to find the best way to move forward. Quote, one of the causes of disagreements between the players, according to multiple sources, is an approach to a potential strike. Players authorized a potential strike in a near unanimous vote in mid-December, but some players have changed their minds since. So that brings us over to Alexa Philippou, right? Here we go. Kelsey Plum, the first VP of the WNBPA. I want to play.
There it is. The revenue sharing system. That's what flipped the script. Because here's what happened that nobody's talking about. The owners made a calculated move that might have just won them this entire negotiation. They gave the players a taste. In the final weeks of the 2024 season, the net revenue share kicked in for the first time. Players got bonus checks, real money, not projections on a spreadsheet, not promises about future earnings, actual deposits in their bank accounts from the revenue-sharing formula they'd fought for. And now Kelsey Plum is saying out loud what every owner was hoping she'd realize: no season means no revenue to share.
Kelsey Plum said achieving a revenue-sharing system is something the players fought really hard for, and it is a significant win now that they got a little tasty taste. Even if the players agree to a net share system, Plum says the goal could be to continue to negotiate the expense credits the league gets. Interesting. It sounds to me like they have, I think.
Listen to what she's suggesting now. Move away from fighting over the revenue share percentage and start negotiating other expense details in the CBA. That's a massive strategic shift. The revenue sharing split has been the sticking point in these negotiations for months. It's what Breanna Stewart has been talking about. It's what drove that near-unanimous strike authorization vote. But now the union's first vice president is essentially saying, we got revenue sharing, let's talk about something else. That's not just a negotiating position. That's a white flag on the central issue. And it tells you everything about the split that's developing inside the Players Association right now.
And they can see it, right? And they can see it in their bank accounts. All that kind of thing matters. It's part of playing the game for the owners. It was smart. It was smart. But you're hearing right here, other expense details. In other words, let's start talking about something, because Breanna Stewart just come out 2 days ago and said, the revenue sharing issue is
That's the divide right there. The Twilight players versus the future of the league. And it's getting ugly behind closed doors. According to multiple sources, there was a tense meeting between players last week. The issue? Their approach to a potential strike. Because while that December vote was near unanimous, some players have changed their minds since, and we can identify exactly which players are panicking and which ones are thinking long-term. The veterans in their final year or two, they're the ones pushing hardest for immediate maximum dollars. Diana Taurasi turns 43 in June. Sue Bird retired. Candace Parker retired. Breanna Stewart is 30 with maybe 5 elite years left. They want their money now, and they don't particularly care if a prolonged strike damages the league's momentum. Why would they? They won't be around to deal with the consequences.
Is the sticking point right now. And I think a lot of us believe there's really a split between the old guard of the WNBA, the Twilight players, and the younger players that still have time to make significant money over the next 5 to 10 to 12 years. But the ones that only got a year or two left, they're panicking because they want to get paid.
But then you've got players like Kelsey Plum, who's 30 but has at least 5 to 8 years left in her prime. You've got Caitlin Clark, who just finished her rookie season. Paige Buchers hasn't even been drafted yet. These players are looking at this completely differently. They saw what happened in 2024. They saw Caitlin Clark drive attendance up 93%. They saw 23 games draw over 1 million viewers on ESPN. They saw the Indiana Fever go from playing in front of 4,000 fans to selling out 17,000-seat arenas. They watched the league sign new media deals worth $200 million annually, starting in 2026. And they're thinking, if we strike now, if we kill this momentum, what's the league going to look like when we're in our prime earning years?
I said they in part, and I think this is out of animosity, don't care if the league gets tanked. You know, what do they care? They're not going to be around to play anymore. You know, Nika Agumike's already decided to go play in Project B and make $2 million. So if she tanks the league, she's like, okay, it is what it is. But the players that know they got 5 years left, 8 years left, 10 years left.
And consider who's already abandoned ship. Nneka Ogwumike, 3-time WNBA MVP, former Players Association president. She just signed with Unrivaled for $2 million to play 3-on-3 basketball in a startup league. She's not waiting around for this CBA negotiation to play out. She got her money and moved on. That's the nuclear option some veterans are taking. But most players can't do that. Most players need the WNBA season to happen because they're not getting $2 million offers from startup leagues. They're making $150,000 in WNBA salary, and they just got their first taste of what revenue-sharing bonuses look like on top of that. So when Kelsey Plum says a strike would be the worst thing for both sides, she's speaking for the players who actually need this season to happen.
He tries to get back into the facility, be swiping his card, and it's nothing's happening. Nothing's happening. Hey, we're trying to get in there to shoot some baskets. Nah, you can't get in there. You've been locked out. That's what that would look like. Kelsey Plum was the latest player to speak out about the negotiations. She's in the middle of it all as the WNBA first vice president. That would be the WNBA VP, right? Players Committee.
Now here's where the owners played this brilliantly. By triggering that revenue share bonus before the CBA expired, they accomplished two things. First, they proved the system works. Players saw real money from the formula. Second, they created an immediate financial incentive for players to avoid a strike. Because think about the math here. Let's say the average player got a $15,000 bonus from the net revenue share at the end of 2024. Now multiply that across a full season with the new media deals kicking in. We're potentially talking about $30,000 in additional revenue share money for mid-tier players. For stars, it could be 6 figures. If they strike and miss even half the season, that money evaporates. And unlike a traditional salary negotiation where you're fighting for future earnings, this is money they've already seen. They know it's real. That changes the psychology completely.
All the way out to like 2031, there will probably be an opt-out in there that's sooner than that. So they can go back to the drawing board again after they've established the last couple of years isn't just outliers. And that's what the owners are worried about. That like, you know, yeah, we're seeing the ratings, we're seeing attendance, we're seeing all this money, but is it going to last? Or are people going to get fed up and go back away and we're right back in the hole we were in? Tell me what you think. Peace. I'm out.
And that gets us to the real question here. What happens next? Because the WNBA just submitted another counterproposal to the players. No details yet, but the timing is crucial. The league is negotiating from a position of strength right now because they can see the Players Association fracturing. The owners know that every day that passes without a deal, more players are going to start panicking about missing paychecks. They know the revenue share bonus created a split between veterans who want to maximize this CBA and younger players who are thinking about the next one. They know that Kelsey Plum just publicly backed away from the strike threat, so the question becomes, how much are the owners willing to give to close this deal quickly versus how much are they willing to hold firm and let the pressure build on the players. Here's what we know about the sticking points. The players want gross revenue sharing instead of net revenue sharing. The difference matters enormously. Gross revenue means they get their percentage before the league deducts expenses. Net revenue means expenses come out first, then players get their cut. The league is obviously pushing for net revenue because it protects them if costs spike. The players also want a higher percentage. The current CBA gave them 50-50 revenue sharing, but that's on net revenue after the league deducts certain expenses. Reports suggest the players are pushing for something closer to 60-40 or even 65-35 on gross revenue. The owners are reportedly offering something in the low 50s on net revenue. That gap is substantial. But here's the thing. Kelsey Plum just signaled that the players might be willing to accept net revenue sharing if they can negotiate better terms on the expense deductions. That's a huge concession. That's the union saying, we'll accept your framework if you give us more transparency and control over what expenses you're deducting. The other major sticking point is contract guarantees. Players want fully guaranteed contracts like the NBA. The league has historically resisted this because of the financial uncertainty around franchise viability. But after 2024's attendance and ratings surge, that argument is getting harder to make. Then there's the salary cap structure. Players want it raised significantly to account for the new media deals. The league wants to phase increases in gradually to avoid shocking the system. There's also debate over supermax contracts, free agency rules, and practice facility standards. But all of that becomes negotiable once the players back down from the revenue-sharing fight, and that's exactly what Kelsey Plum just did. Now think about the position this puts the hardliners in. Breanna Stewart has been one of the most vocal players pushing for maximum revenue share and threatening strike action. But if Kelsey Plum, the first vice president of the union, is publicly softening her position, how long can Stewart maintain the hard line? The answer is probably not long, because the Players Association operates on solidarity, and that solidarity is cracking. Once players start changing their minds about the strike, which multiple sources confirm is already happening, the whole strategy collapses. You can't strike effectively with a divided union. You need near-unanimous commitment to walk away from paychecks and maintain leverage. The moment the owners sense weakness, the moment they know some players are desperate to play, the strike threat becomes meaningless. And the owners definitely sense weakness right now. They've seen Kelsey Plum's comments, they've heard about the tense meeting, they know Nneka Ogwumike bailed to Unrivaled. They're reading the same reports we are about players changing their minds. So the counterproposal they just submitted is probably designed to split the difference just enough to give the moderates like Plum something to sell to the membership. It'll probably include some improvements on expense transparency, maybe a modest bump in the revenue share percentage, definitely some enhancements to player benefits and working conditions. And here's the thing, that's probably going to be enough, because the alternative is a strike that half the players don't want, that will cost everyone money they've already tasted, and that could damage the momentum the league finally built in 2024. The players fought hard for revenue sharing, and they got it. They proved it works by receiving those bonuses. Now they're realizing that fighting over the exact percentage might cost them more than it gains them. That's not weakness. That's math. The owners made a smart play by triggering those bonuses early. They gave the players something real to lose. And now we're watching the inevitable result play out in real time. Will there be a CBA deal before the season starts? Based on Kelsey Plum's comments and the reported split in the Players Association, the answer is probably yes. Will the players get everything they wanted? No. But will they get enough to declare victory and move forward? Almost certainly. Because at the end of the day, everyone involved just watched the WNBA have its best season in history. They saw what's possible when everything clicks. And very few people want to be responsible for destroying that momentum over a few percentage points in a revenue-sharing formula. The strike threat was always going to be difficult to maintain once players saw real revenue-sharing money. You can't put that genie back in the bottle. You can't show people what they're fighting for and then ask them to walk away from it. So my prediction, we'll see a deal in the next 2 to 3 weeks. The players will get some improvements on expense transparency and maybe a modest bump in the revenue share percentage. They'll get some enhancements to benefits and working conditions. The league will get to keep net revenue sharing and avoid a strike that could have cratered their momentum. And both sides will declare victory, even though the owners probably won this round by making that early revenue share payment. Sometimes the smartest negotiating tactic is giving your opponent a taste of what they're fighting for, then watching them realize they don't want to risk losing it. That's exactly what happened here, and Kelsey Plum just confirmed it.